Chapter 16. When the 4 horsemen came, school teacher, one nephew, one slave catcher, and a sheriff, the house on Bluestone Road was so quiet they thought they were too late. 3 of them dismounted. One stayed in the saddle, his rifle ready, his eyes trained away from the house to the left and to the right, because likely as not the fugitive would make a dash for it. Although sometimes, you could never tell, you'd find them folded up tight somewhere, beneath floorboards, in a pantry, once in a chimney. Even then, care was taken, because the quietest ones, the ones you pulled from a press, a hayloft, or that once from a chimney, would go along nicely for 2 or 3 seconds. Caught red-handed, so to speak, they would seem to recognize the futility of outsmarting a white man and the hopelessness of outrunning a rifle. Smile even, like a child caught dead with his hand in the jelly jar. And when you reached for the rope to tie him, well, even then you couldn't tell. The very black man with his head hanging and a little jelly jar smile on his face could all of a sudden roar like a bull or some such and commence to do disbelievable things. Grab the rifle at its mouth, throw himself at the one holding it, anything. So you had to keep back a pace, leave the tying to someone else. Otherwise, you ended up killing what you were paid to bring back alive. Unlike a snake or a bear, a dead black man could not be skinned for profit and was not worth his own dead weight in coin. 6 or 7 black folks were walking up the road toward the house. 2 boys from the slave catcher's left and some women from his right. He motioned them still with his rifle, and they stood where they were. The nephew came back from peeping inside the house, and after touching his lips for silence, pointed his thumb to say that what they were looking for was round back. The slave catcher dismounted then and joined the others. School teacher and the nephew moved to the left of the house, himself and the sheriff to the right. A crazy old black man was standing in the woodpile with an axe. You could tell he was crazy right off, because he was grunting, making low cat noises like. About 12 yards beyond that black man was another one, a woman with a flower in her hat. Crazy too, probably, because she too was standing stock still, but fanning her hands as though pushing cobwebs out of her way. Both, however, were staring at the same place, a shed. Nephew walked over to the old black man and took the axe from him. Then all 4 started toward the shed. Inside, 2 boys bled in the sawdust and dirt at the feet of a black woman holding a blood-soaked child to her chest with one hand and an infant by the heels in the other. She did not look at them. She simply swung the baby toward the wall planks, missed, and tried to connect a second time, when out of nowhere, in the ticking time the men spent staring at what there was to stare at, the old black man, still mewing, ran through the door behind them and snatched the baby from the arch of its mother's swing. Right off it was clear, to the school teacher especially, that there was nothing there to claim. The 3, now 4, because she'd had the one coming when she cut pickaninnies they had hoped for, they'd hoped were alive and well enough to take back to Kentucky, take back and raise properly to do the work Sweet Home desperately needed, were not. 2 were lying open-eyed in the sawdust. A third pumped blood down the dress of the main one, the woman school teacher bragged about, the one he said made fine ink, damn good soup, pressed his collars the way he liked, besides having at least 10 breeding years left. But now she'd gone wild, due to the mishandling of the nephew who'd overbeat her and made her cut and run. School teacher had chastised that nephew, telling him to think, just think, what would his own horse do if you beat it beyond the point of education? Or Chipper, or Samson. Suppose you beat the hounds past that point that away. Never again could you trust them in the woods or anywhere else. You'd be feeding them, maybe, holding out a piece of rabbit in your hand, and the animal would revert, bite your hand clean off. So he punished that nephew by not letting him come on the hunt.